Hello fellow code monkeys, welcome to my channel. I'm Lucas and today's video is about the top 10 CSS features you should use in 2023. These features will make your code so much more efficient, maintainable, robust, readable, so they will basically help you to write better code. Let's get started. You probably already heard at least something about the CSS math function clamp. Clamp basically helps you to create responsive design without using media queries. A typical use case for clamp would be to define a width of a box, for example. Let's say we have a div with a class name of box here. Now this box should have a background color of, let's say, blue-violet, a width of 150 pixels and a height of 150 pixels as well. Now we have our box with a fixed width. This means if we increase the size of the window here, the width of the box stays the same. But we want to change this to a responsive width. For that we only need to say width, clamp. Now inside the parentheses we have to add three values: a min width, a preferred width and a max width. So our width for this box is 55%. But we never want the width of our box to be smaller than 220 pixels and never be bigger than 300 pixels. Now let's delete this line over here, save, and now we have the box with a responsive width. If we now start to increase the size of the window, at first you can't see any changes. And this is because the 55% width is currently smaller than our min width of 220 pixels. But if we keep increasing the size of the window, at some point you can see that the width of the box starts to grow until it reaches the max width of 300 pixels. Then it stops to grow. And this is basically how clamp works. The CSS scroll behavior for smooth scrolling. Let's say we have two sections, a top section and a bottom section. Let's also add some text here and here. Now we want both of those sections to have a height of 100 VH. Okay, perfect. Now we have here is our top section, and if we scroll down, we have our bottom section. Next we want to link from the top section to the bottom section. So for that we just need to add an anchor tag inside the top section, and we want to link to the ID name of bottom. Of course, we also need to add the ID name to the bottom section. And now, if we click here, we'll get redirected to the bottom section. But we don't want to jump down to the bottom section. We want a smooth scroll down to the bottom section. For that, we just need to add HTML scroll behavior smooth. Let's save. And now, if I click on this top, we get redirected to the bottom, but we don't jump down, we scroll down with a smooth scrolling effect. CSS Scroll Snap enables snapping sections and parts as the user scrolls through overflowing content. Let me first set up everything we need for this before I start explaining in detail. So we're going to need some sort of a container here, so let's create a div with a class name of container. Inside this container, we want to create some child divs with a class name of, let's say, card. And we want to create 4 divs here. And each of the cards should display a unique number. Now to the CSS part, for the container, we want a width of 120 pixels, a height of 100 pixels. We also want to make it a flexbox by adding display flex. And we also want to add overflow x scroll. Perfect. Now for the cards inside the container, we want a min width of 100 pixels, and we also want to add display flex, align items center, and justify content center. Now these 3 lines are just to center the text inside the card. Now another great idea would be to give each card a different background color. So we say container.card nth child, background color, let's say light salmon. Now we copy this 3 times for child 2, child 3, child 4. We say light green or gray, light gray. And we say here light green. And here we say light sky blue, like that. Perfect. Now, this is our scroll container. Inside there are 4 cards and we can scroll from left to right. Now, if we want to enable scroll snap here, we only have to add 2 properties. The first one we need to add to the container is called scroll snap type. Now, there are many different values you can add here, but in most of the cases, you want to just add mandatory here. And before that, you need to specify the direction. So in our case, we would put an X here for the X-axis because we scroll left and right. And now for the child diffs, with the class name of card, we have to add the property scroll snap align. And we want to choose center here. Now, if I scroll in our scroll container and stop between 2 cards, it will automatically snap to the nearest card. And because of the scroll snap align property, it will align the card in the center of the scroll container. And that's how scroll snap works. The inset property is allowing you to specify the spacing between the positioned and the relative element on all 4 sides at once. So basically, this is a shorthand for the 4 properties top, right, bottom and left. Now, let me show you how this works with a simple example. So let's say we have a container here. So let's create a div with a class name of container. And inside this container, we want a div with a class name of box. Let's save and move on to the CSS part. Now for the container, we want the container to have the position relative and a background color of, let's say, light blue, a width of 200 pixels and a height of 200 pixels as well. And now for the box inside the container, we want to position the box absolute to the container. We also want to say background color light pink, for example. Yeah, let's save. Now, as you can see, we can see the container, but we cannot see the box right now. And this is because we have to add one of the 2 following things. Option 1 would be we add a width and a height of, let's say, 60%. Now we would see our box. And now we can start to place our box with the 4 properties top, right, bottom and left. So we could say top 20 pixels and left 20 pixels as well. Let's save. Now we define a space on top and left of 20 pixels. Now if we don't want to declare the width and the height, we could just delete them and add the right property and also the bottom property, like that. This would also work. Now there is a way to combine those 4 lines into just one single line. The inset property. We can say inset 20 pixels. Now delete those 4 lines and save, and we get the exact same result. The order property is another really easy but really useful CSS feature that many developers still haven't heard of. To be able to show you the full magic of the order property, I first need to create a div with a class name of container here. Then we want to create inside this container 4 child divs with a class name of item. Now each of those divs should display a unique number. For those items inside the container, we want to add a styling of width 40 pixels, a height 40 pixels, a background color of, let's say, light coral. Also we want to say display flex, align items, center, and justify content center as well. Now these 3 lines are just to center the text inside the child div. And for the container, we want to add display flex and a flex direction of column. because we want the items to be displayed below each other. Now, I don't want to go too much into the details here, but there will be times when you need a different order of content parts for your mobile and PC version, for example. And one way to change the order of your content parts is by selecting all the child divs in this case and assigning the order property. So let's do this. We have container.item nth child order 1. Let's copy that for the other child divs as well, for the child 2, 3, 4, order 2, 3, 4. Now this would be the default, okay? So the child 1 has the order 1, the child 2 has the order 2, and so on. Now if we want to switch the child 2 and child 3, we only have to change this to 3 and the order of the third child to 2. Let's save, and as you can see, we changed the order of those two. Now, if you only have 2 items in your container, so let's delete the rest, you wouldn't need all of that. Let's delete this as well. It would be enough to just say column reverse, to reverse your column. And now your item 2 is on the position 1 and the item 1 is on the position 2. Let's assume you have a paragraph with some text in it, okay? Now, for that paragraph, you want to add a padding of 12 pixels on all sides. Pretty easy, right? Now, this padding property is actually the shorthand for this. This is the same as this. Another way to write this would be by saying padding 12 pixels, 12 pixels, 12 pixels, 12 pixels, like that. The first number would be the top padding, the second the right, the third the bottom padding, the fourth would be the padding on the left, okay? Now, if you want a smaller padding on the left and on the right side, you could change here right to 8, left to 8, it will work. Or this way you could change the second and the fourth value to 8, This would also work. And there's another way to write it. You could say padding 12 pixels, padding 8 pixels, like that. Now the first value would be the top and the bottom, and the second value would be the left and the right, okay? Now, what if you want to just set a padding for the left and the right without adding a padding to the top and the bottom? Now, for this you could do something like padding left 8 pixels and padding right 8 pixels as well. And now with the CSS logical properties, you could combine those two lines into just one single line. You could say padding inline would be the right version here, 8 pixels. Now this one line would be the same as these two lines, okay? And for padding top and bottom, there would be also a logical property. You would just have to say padding block, let's say 10 pixels. Now this would create a padding at top and bottom. You can also use the logical property for margin. If you want a margin only on top and bottom, you say margin block, and so on. Or if you want to have a border only on the left and on the right side, you can say border inline and specify the border. So as you can see, you should definitely also check out the CSS logical properties. 2 more great features for creating responsive design are the CSS math functions min and max. You simply put a comma-separated list of value inside the parentheses, and the min function will always choose the smaller value, while the max function will always choose the bigger value. So for example, let's say you have a div with a class name of box. And this box has a width of, let's say, 70%, a height of 100 pixels, and a background color of light coral. Okay, perfect. Now we want to make sure for this box that the min width is never smaller than 100 pixels. We can get this by saying min width 100 pixels, like that. Now we could also combine those two lines. If we say width, use the max function here, add both values, like that, perfect, and delete those two lines. Perfect. Now we should get the same result. And this is because the max function will always choose the bigger value. This means if the 70% are bigger than 100 pixels, it will select the 70%. But if the 70% of the viewport is smaller, then it will select the 100 pixels. So it could never get smaller than 100 pixels. Now, if we would change to the min function here, this would mean that the width of the box will never be bigger than 100 pixels because it will always pick the smaller value now, okay? So if the 70% of the viewport are bigger now, it will just choose the 100 pixels because this would be then the smaller value. And this is basically how those two functions work. Truncate text with the CSS line clamp property. This property is actually already around since 2012 and very helpful. The line clamp property truncates text at a specific number of lines. For it to work, we need a combination of 3 properties. Let's try it out. So first, let's create a text container. Inside this container, we need some text like that. Perfect. Now, in the CSS part, we want the font size to be at least 24 pixels here. Now we only want to show the first 3 lines of the text. So for that, we have to add display WebKit box, then WebKit box orient vertical. Also, we have to add WebKit line clamp 3 because we want to show 3 lines. And finally, overflow hidden. Let's save. Now we can only see 3 lines. Now, if we change the value here to 4, we will now see 4 lines and so on. Now, this is how you truncate text with the CSS line clamp. This feature is actually still pretty new, but already supported by all major browsers, except for Firefox. But this will probably change this year. So, what can we do with it? Well, we can select elements that contain a specific content. Okay? For example, we can say div has p. Now, with this line, you would target all div elements that have a paragraph element inside them as a child. Okay? But we cannot only target HTML elements with that. No, we can also target class names, for example. So we could say a container has, say, item, like that. Now we would target all elements with a class name of item inside the container. So as you can see, the pseudo-class has a lot to offer. If you want to target multiple elements to add the same style rules to them, you probably end up with a long selector list. For example, let's say you have a container, and inside this container you have a headline, and below this headline you have a paragraph with text, and below the text you have a button. Now, if you want to change the color of the headline, the text, and the button text to blue, for example, you would have to say .container h2, then you have .container p for paragraph, .container button. Color light sky blue, like that. Let's save. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing it that way. That's completely fine. But you could also achieve the same result with less words by using the pseudo-class is. So let's try it out. We only would have to say container is, and now inside the parentheses we have to add what we want to target. So we want to target the headline inside the container, the paragraph, and the button, like that. And now we say color light sky blue. Perfect, and now we should get the exact same result like with this block here, but this is way shorter and it's also much more readable, right? So we could also target class names here. So for example, if we want to target a div with a class name of item, we could just say .item, and that's it. That's all you need to do. So I would really recommend you to start using the is pseudo class if you aren't already, because as you can see, it's pretty convenient. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed watching it, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!